Alright, so I've got this little TO20 Ferguson tractor, and this goes for about anything you can do this on, but I'm going to do a cylinder leak down test, and the reason I'm doing this is because this tractor supposedly has a blown head gasket. Me personally, I don't think it does. This tractor has sat outside in the weather for probably 10 years, hardly ever covered up. It's never been taken care of. And the reason why they think it has a blown head gasket is you pull the dipstick and there's milk looking oil in it. So that means there's gotten water in the oil. But what I believe that's happened is it's just sat outside so long and it's just got water in it from weather. And this is a good way to check, because if you I basically got my little tester here from Harbor Freight, and this is your input line off your air compressor, and this will show on the gauge how much air is going in, and this will show how much is being lost. So basically, if say this gauge reads 50 and this one's reading 40, more than likely it will, because you're not going to have as much air in the cylinder, because you're going to lose a little air probably somewhere, especially being on this tractor. This is a late 40s, early 50s tractor, never been rebuilt. So we're losing a little oil out of the dipstick tube. I'm not too concerned about that. That means it's getting past the rings, but honestly, for what this thing's used for, it's not worth rebuilding, and it starts right up and runs fine. So if it comes out of the dipstick tube and you can hear it and you see your gauge going down, you're getting air past the rings, and you're probably not going to notice it too bad, unless it's really bad. And you're going to disconnect your radiator cap and your carburetor, and if you hear it coming out of the carburetor, you're going to have some burnt valves or seals, and if it comes out of the radiator, it's going to be a head gasket. And usually when it's a head gasket, you're going to hear it coming out of the radiator pretty bad, and you're probably going to see your gauge drop. So basically, we're going to run through this and I'm going to show you. And this basically has a valve. When you got your air compressor with full of air, this has got a valve you turn this way and it lets the air in. So we're going to go ahead and let the air in, and we're going to see how it works. But before you do this, there's a couple of things that you need to do. One at a time. You need to take your plugs out. You need to disconnect your coil wire and make sure your key's off. And we're gonna cranked the engine over, and I've already checked these three and they were all good, besides a little ring loss. But you're gonna put your thumb over this hole while you crank, and you're gonna feel that cylinder start to push your thumb out. And what that means is both your valves are shut. So we want both them valves shut, and this cylinder needs to be on close to top dead center. So we got this one close. So go ahead and do that. Like I said, make sure your coil wire is disconnected. You'll just pop it off the coil so it don't get no signal, and make sure your key's off and your gas, just to be safe. So because this tractor will start on 3 cylinders if you leave all that stuff together. So we're going to go ahead and do this. I've got my air hose hooked up from my compressor. I'm going to go ahead and start turning this valve, and listen, I'm hoping that we're not going to hear nothing come out of the radiator cap. So we'll start to turn this, and you'll see the air build. We're going to go ahead and crank this up to about 90. You can crank it up to whatever you want. I think that on this one, 90 is plenty. So you can see we're losing quite a bit of air, but when you listen, there's nothing coming out of the radiator cap. What's going on, and you want to make sure your dipstick tube's loose too. There's air coming out of that dipstick tube, so we're losing air through the rings. But I'm not hearing anything around the head that's hissing. Nothing's coming out of the radiator. And nothing's coming out of the carburetor. So basically what that's telling us is our engine is kind of worn out. It needs rings for sure, but we're not going to do that. We'll put a little more, get it up to 90, and kind of watch this. See how it's staying there? It's staying. It's coming down a little, but that's kind of just telling us, and you can hear it here, we're losing air from rings. So there is no blown head gasket on this tractor. It's just got water in it somehow, just from setting out. We've changed the oil in it once and it's still got some milky stuff in it. But the reason why is because it's just going to take a while to cycle all that junk out of there. And another reason why I don't believe this is a blown head gasket is because the radiator is busted and it won't hold fluid anyway. So over time, this would have leaked out. And like I said, this tractor was probably ran, you know, just filled with water one day, and it'll leak out overnight because so it's not really getting in the engine. Another thing you can do to check for a blown head gasket is check your dipstick tube and make sure, you know, park the tractor inside and make sure the level stays the same. If you're driving this thing around and it's not out in weather and your oil's filling up and looking milky, that's going to be probably a blown head gasket, cracked head, or cracked cylinder wall. So it can be any of them things. But these tractors are pretty stout. I kind of figured this probably wasn't the issue. So I just thought you guys would like to see that. We'll go ahead, you can see it's dropped, but that's just from the rings. Putting 90 PSI in there's quite a bit of air on that cylinder. So we'll go ahead and back this off. You want to back it off before you disconnect it. Otherwise you might ruin this, and we can lock that in and disconnect all this stuff. Put our spark plug back on, and we'll get another fresh oil change in this thing. I'm going to put some heavy duty diesel oil in this, and this is a gas, but it works good for these kind of motors. So we'll kind of diagnose this. We're safe now. No blown head gasket. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you kind of learned something from this. I'm sure there's probably other ways to do it. If you don't like the video, that's fine, but I don't need no negative comments or nothing. I'm just trying to show you guys how I did it. So thank you for watching.